Okay. Good morning to all. Welcome to. Whoops. I didn't pause it. There we go. Good morning to everyone. Happy Friday. What are you guys up to this weekend? Big plans? Little plans? No plans? Just like no? Eat, sleep, and repeat? Okay. What's that? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all right. How'd the quiz go yesterday? Okay. Not bad. Didn't go well. No. Deaf. Deaf. Okay. Well, I didn't get a chance to look at it yet. I was telling these two guys here that I had a meeting last night that went kind of late, so I didn't get a chance to look at it. So I'll look at it over the weekend and we'll review it Monday. Okay. Okay, but let's jump in here to where we were on. Oh, is it Tuesday now?
What?
Yeah, it is Tuesday. Well, no. Sorry. It's okay. It's not Tuesday today. Avataj just had a minor panic attack. It's what now? No. It was Tuesday that we last did stuff, right? Because you guys had a day off on Wednesday, and then we did the quiz Thursday, and so here we are Friday. Wow. Okay. So on Tuesday, we were working on that assignment with the alien, right? And I asked you to kind of brainstorm a bunch of rules, right? For I guess I got to mark that this weekend too. Well, I guess I've got a busy weekend. Rules for kind of being a boy and being a girl, right? And again, our societies all teach us these rules, right? They kind of we're socialized into them, we absorb them, and we kind of know how to follow them. And I think in most cases we don't even really try to follow them, right? Like I don't have to get up in the morning and like consciously go into the closet and say, okay, don't wear a dress today, don't wear a dress today, right? I don't have to think about it. You just kind of do it, right? You just kind of follow most of the gender rules that apply to you, right? And again, regardless of where we come from in the world, what society we kind of belong to, all societies have these gender expectations, right? These gender rules, and they do expect us to follow them, right? And which set of rules we follow, whether it's the rules for girls or the rules for boys, is determined kind of in our first seconds of life, right? Our very first seconds of life, our mother gives birth to us, the doctor or whoever catches us, looks at us and says, it's a boy or it's a girl, right? And then that's your sex assigned at birth, right? That one kind of glance, for the most part, determines which set of rules you follow, right? And most of us probably have seen young children, and we very quickly start socializing them into gender roles, right? Often we'll dress little girls in pink, right? Even when they're little babies, we'll dress them in pink, and we'll dress little boys in blue. Not always, but sometimes. Sometimes we'll put our little ribbon. If the baby has just a little bit of hair, we'll put a tiny little ribbon in the hair, right? Some people will paint the baby's room girly colors or more boy colors. The toys that we start to buy for these children sometimes are gendered, sometimes not, right? Little stuffed toys, little stuffies are not gendered, but we might start buying other things for them as well. And so unless we are consciously trying not to do it, we usually start to teach them gender almost immediately, right? Almost immediately, with clothing, with toys, with how we interact with them, how we speak to them, and sometimes even the expectations that we have for them, right? Little girls sometimes are, if they hurt themselves or if they're sad or if they cry, often they're kind of allowed to cry and express those emotions, right? But when it happens to boys, often we socialize them to kind of suck it up, like you're okay, just get back up, you're fine, and so we kind of almost instinctively very early start to kind of teach and enforce these gender differences, right? And again, it happens almost immediately, and it happens throughout our society, right? Everyone in our society will see us as a little boy or a little girl, and they will treat us accordingly, right? They'll treat us like a little boy or a little girl. And so not only are we kind of introduced into gender norms almost immediately when we're born, but good morning. We're introduced to gender norms, but we also, those gender norms and those rules will be supported by everyone else we meet, right? Because everyone else knows the rules too, right? And so people will treat us like little boys and little girls, right? Our teachers, our aunts and uncles, our grandparents, people we meet in the street, everyone will treat us this way, right? And so our kind of, those gender norms will be reinforced, right? And again, things that are like this in society, things that are kind of reinforced almost everywhere you look, start to seem like they are normal, right? They start to it seems like the way the world is, okay? And again, why wouldn't you think that? Why wouldn't anyone think that when everyone seems to believe this is true, right? If every single person believes this is true, it feels like a law of the universe, right? It feels like it's real and tangible, right? But again, a lot of these gender rules are arbitrary, right? They're made up, right? And so again, we're indoctrinated into this kind of idea of what gender is. And again, every society has a slightly different idea of what it is to be a man and what it is to be a woman. Although I do find it interesting that every time we do that alien exercise, we come up with a lot of similar things, sometimes some different things too, but we come up with a lot of similar things. And so it is interesting how, again, we've all been brought up in different societies. We all have this idea of what gender is. And again, if we break those rules, sometimes there will be consequences for it, right? And so every society has kind of an idea of what it is to be a man, right? What's the ideal man and what's the ideal woman? And kind of the further we move away from that ideal, sometimes the more kind of social reminders that we get, right? Or social punishments that will happen from not being manly enough, right? Or not being womanly enough. And so part of this socialization is not just the rules, right? But the idea that the rules are true and natural, right? And even biological. But again, remember what we said about culture and socialization is that we're actually born with very little in terms of our programming, right? We don't really have an operating system when we're born. We don't really know how to do much of anything. And so everything that we learn, especially, well, about gender and about everything else, is actually taught to us, right? Most of those things don't come from outside, they don't come from inside, they come from outside, right? In terms of what gender is, right? What is it to be a man? What is it to be a woman? We don't know when we're born, right? Society teaches us what that means, right? But we also have a gender identity, right? We have a way in which we feel. And I think, and again, I'm not going to ask you this. Well, I am going to ask you, but I don't want you to answer because it's a personal thing. But I think you all kind of know what your gender is, right? You kind of look inside and you're like, yeah, I'm a guy, I'm a man, right? Or I'm a girl, I'm a young woman, right? We all kind of have an idea. But again, some of us don't fit into that gender binary either, right? Some of us feel like, yes, I'm a man, but of course I'm in the body of a woman, or I feel like I'm a woman in here and up here, but I seem to have the body of a man, right? Or there's some people who think about gender and they think, you know what, neither of those things really make sense for me, right? There's men and there's women, and I'm not that, and I'm not this thing either, right? I'm kind of a mix of both, or or gender just doesn't mean anything to me. And so there's people like that as well. And so that kind of brings us to what I would like to look at today, which is a short documentary called The T Word. Any idea what the T word is? The word that starts with T? Yeah. Thought you were going to say like Toyota or tumor or it's not that. Tacos? No. It's not it's so yeah, it is trans, right? The word is trans. And so what we're going to do in watching this documentary is the documentary is hosted by Laverne Cox. If you know who Laverne is an actress. She's become very popular on a show called Orange is the New Black. It's on Netflix, I think. Don't quote me on that. I think the show has ended now, but it was a couple years ago. It was very popular, and it made her a very popular star as well. She's also been on. Has anyone watched Never Have I Ever on Netflix? Yeah. Laverne Cox shows up on one episode as she's somebody's like older cousin, and she helps. I can't even remember. It's too long ago. But anyway, Laverne Cox is going to host this documentary, and she's going to kind of go around the country and introduce us to a bunch of transgender youth. Okay, so people that are roughly your age, that their gender identity is different from their physical body. And so they're going to talk a little bit about who they are and their lives and their experiences and how people interact with them and what they kind of want. Because again, the kind of the best way to to sort of understand other people's experiences is to meet them and hear them speak, right? And so I don't happen to have a group of trans people I can bring into the room here, but we can watch this documentary and get a better idea, okay? So as we watch this, I've got a few questions for you here, and I'll just give you a second to read over those, and I am going to I'm just going to pop them into Microsoft Teams so that we have them kind of in digital format, okay? So just give me 2 seconds here. 2 seconds here. Be right with you, people. I'm just putting this in Microsoft Teams, and it takes a minute to do, but don't worry because I'll be done in a second. And then you won't have to listen to me kind of sing anymore. I'm sure that'll make you very happy. Okay, so I put these questions into Microsoft Teams, and this is what I want you to pay attention to as we watch, okay? So, number 1, how has socialization played a role in the lives of these young people, okay? There's probably I think it's about 5 or 6 young people that we'll meet, I think. These young people will talk about how they kind of how did they know their gender, okay? I'd like to pay attention to that. We'll hear about language, why language is important when talking about trans people, okay? We will meet one young man whose name is Kai, and Kai he'll talk about a time when he was asked a lot of questions about his gender identity rather than his athletic performance. Okay, he's a basketball player, so you'll see that. Are you good? Yeah. Okay. Why do some people not want to use the pronouns that trans people request, right? So, again, if trans people usually want to be referred to by their gender identity, right? So even if they're born in a male body, they would like to be referred to as her or she, right? Although some people use different pronouns here, which we can talk about a little bit later. Um, we'll meet a young man named Ari. Some other young men complained about him being in the locker room, and so we can talk about that. Why is dating much more difficult for trans individuals? We can talk about that. Passing privilege, I'd like to know what that is. Why are trans people the victim of bullying and discrimination and harassment? Sorry. And then the last one, we'll meet a young woman named Daniela. Why why are trans women like Daniela so vulnerable? Okay, so only 10 questions. Some of them are pretty easy, I think. Um, but are we okay to start watching? Do you have any questions before we jump in? No. Um, okay, let's do it then. Okay. So Adon is online there. So Adon, the link and the questions are in Microsoft Teams, and maybe what we'll do is, as usual, we'll watch 25 minutes, and then we'll take a break. Yeah, watch 25 minutes. We'll take a break, and then we will come back and talk about this. Okay? Ready? 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 Okay, let's do it. Okay. Here we go. Okay. And we're back. So we've watched about 25 minutes of this. We've met a few people. We've met Zoe, the girl in pink. We've met Ari, the musician. We've met Kai, the basketball player. And we met Shane, right, who's found the love of his life with Jessica, right? So there we go. So let's gonna get rid of this here. Let's start with this first one. So how has socialization played a role in the lives of these young people? It's played a role in all of our lives, but what?
It's been harder for them.
It's been hard? Okay, why do you say that?
Because like as I said in the video, it's hard for
Yeah, they have one layer of difficulties.
One layer.
people say they feel weird in front of them or something.
Right.
A lot of discrimination.
The bullying.
Okay. There's okay, but what does that have to do with socialization? Yeah, there's some awkwardness, there's some bullying sometimes. What does it have to do with socialization?
Maybe they were supposed to be with their genders, like to go.
Okay, they're supposed to be with their gender, but they're not. Anna, what do you think?
I think that society has told us for a long time that there are just two genders, and
Yeah.
whatever like gets out of it, it's just wrong, and that's why it gets awkward maybe.
Yeah.
Sometimes because it's like so burned into our brains.
Yeah.
That it won't be that way.
Right. Yeah. So it's true, right? We've been taught there's these two kind of genders, right? And some of these young people kind of realize that, oh, I don't fit where I thought I did, or people are trying to like put me in this category, and I'm not, right? I don't fit there, right? And some of these kids have a very clear idea of that. Some of them kind of, it takes them longer to figure out. But yeah, society has kind of established that there's two genders, and then has been kind of pushing these kids into the gender of their sex assigned at birth, right? But again, they're like, no, I don't belong there, right? I belong over there, right? I don't feel like I'm supposed to, right? Like here I am, a young boy or a young girl, and I'm supposed to like, young girl things and do girl things, but I don't like any of those things, right? I don't like to have my hair long. I don't like jewelry. I don't want my ears pierced. I don't want to play with dolls. I want to do other things, right? And so, yeah, they're kind of fighting against their socialization, right? And earlier this morning I mentioned that we kind of get those messages from everywhere, right? Those gender role messages. And so they're kind of fighting them, they're kind of pushing against them everywhere they go, right? At home, at school, out on the street, everywhere people are trying to, they're trying to get them to follow the rules, right? They're trying to push them back into their little gender box, and these people are saying, no, you've got it wrong. You've got me wrong. That's not where I fit. I go over here, right? This is who I am. And so, yeah, there's a lot of pushing, right? There's a lot of pushing that they have to do. And it's a lot of work, right? Because again, it comes from everywhere. Right? How do some of these people know their gender? Like when and how do they kind of figure it out? Feelings? Yeah? They kind of just have a...
After like you hit puberty.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it's around puberty, right? Which this is kind of connected to number one, but not really. But can you imagine like having the like horror of going through the wrong puberty? Yeah, right? Like puberty is hard enough, right? Our bodies are changing, sometimes not in the most graceful of ways. And puberty is a tough go anyway, right? But to sort of enter the wrong one, ooh boy, that's got to be really tough, right? But yeah, some people are around puberty. What do you think? How and when do they kind of know? Rena, what do you think?
You just want to be this other adventure, like a girl wants to be like maybe this voice or this voice.
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of know, right? They look at, what little girls are doing and what little boys are doing, and they kind of know where they're attracted to, right? They know that, oh yeah, that's me, right? And I think most children are like this, right? Most little children kind of identify their gender pretty quickly, but we don't really notice it so much because we think it's natural, right? We think it's, oh yeah, of course, this is a little boy. Of course, he is playing with boy toys and he likes boy things, and that's totally normal and natural, and so we don't even pay attention to it, right? We only start to pay attention when a little boy actually starts to want to do other things, right? He wants to wear his mom's shoes, right? And play with dolls and things like that. And suddenly we kind of notice it. But yeah, it seems like these kids start to, in some cases, they start to know right away, right? Ari said, yeah, I knew, as soon as I was old enough to dress myself, I knew who I was, right? And that's pretty early, right? What do you think? Maybe 5 years old? 4 or 5 years old? Yeah, he knew, and he probably even knew before that, but he just can't remember knowing because it's hard to remember anything before the age of 4 or 5, right? So yeah, they just have this feeling, right? They know where they belong, right? They understand gender reasonably quickly, children do, and they know kind of where they fit, right? They know what they like and what they don't. We heard from some people some hurtful words that get used, right? Like tranny and it and a few other things. And with anyone, this question applies to anyone, but why is language important when we're talking to and about transgender people? Cleo, what do you think? What's that? To respect them. Okay, good. What else?
It can be offensive.
Because what?
It can be offensive for them.
Yeah, you can offend people, right? Why else? Why else?
Because it means that something happened to them and now they're the ones.
Yeah, right. There's kind of an implied thing, right? So Kai says, people say I'm transgendered, right? Like something happened to me to be transgender, but he says you don't say I'm blackened, right? What happened for you to be black? Well, nothing, right? I am black, right? What happened to you to be transgender? Well, I am, right? That's the end of it, right? So yeah, sometimes the language can kind of imply things that are not correct, right? Nothing happened to him. He is who he is, right? What else? Why is the language important? Why is the language important?
Because language is a strong way. It either can offend them or make them happy.
Yeah, well, that's true, right? Words are pretty powerful, right? Words are a powerful thing. If you study language at all, one of the things you'll kind of, like in university or wherever, one of the things that you'll kind of come to realize is that language is critically important, right? Because it's the way that we understand and divide up the world, right? So who in this room speaks a language other than English? Everybody, right?
What language is it?
What I probably don't do it anymore, but in university I took 3 years of Russian. So there was a time when I was like, okay, Russian is a complex and beautiful language, but there was a time when I was okay, but I was never really fluent. But anyway, if you speak another language, you'll know that when you're trying to translate from one to the other, sometimes you can't like translate exactly, right? Like you can't go word for word. Sometimes you have to kind of like think about what you want to say in the language you want to say it in, right? You can't kind of, it doesn't work to go directly between back and forth, right? And partly because every language kind of divides up the world a little bit different. It thinks about the world a little bit different. And so the vocabulary, the grammar, the syntax, all of those things are ways in which we speak and we write and we read. But they also worked into that as kind of an idea about how the world works. And it kind of influences the way that we see things, right? So language is powerful, right? What you say about something does influence the way you think about it, right? And so, yeah, language is critically important. The other thing to maybe pay attention to here is the idea of identity, right? We said that your gender is an important part of your identity, right? We're a gendered society, or we all come from gendered societies, and so that makes a difference, right? Even your name, the first day that you were in here, I think, I kind of went through the attendance list and I said, hey, if you want me to call you something different than what's on the list, let me know, right? And I don't just say that as a matter of business. I say that because that's part of me trying to accept who you are, right? Like, what would it be like if, the first day I met Avatej and I said, oh, that's his name, but it's like, ugh, that's too difficult. I'm just going to call you John, okay?
Yeah, just call me Avi.
Just call you Avi?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that I can do.
Yeah.
But imagine if I just said, oh, yeah, I'm just going to call you John. It's too complicated, right? It doesn't fit, right? But also, what am I doing? Well, I'm kind of like denying his identity, right? Avi's telling me who he is, right? This is who I am. And instead I'm saying, no, I don't want to do that. This is who you are, John. Right? And so I'm totally like dismissing his identity, right? I'm signaling that I don't accept who he is, or I don't believe who he's telling me he is, right? And that can't feel good, right? That can't feel good. And we kind of see that happening with Kai and his mom, right? Because Kai's mom seems to have a lot of trouble, and understandably, but has a lot of trouble seeing Kai as a young man, right? His mom still sees him as the daughter that she gave birth to, right? And so, and again, I'm sure that that's difficult, right? As a parent, you give birth to this child and you raise them and you think you see them as a little girl, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, you were wrong, right? And so it's hard to sort of change your perception of somebody, right? But for her, she's really struggling to accept him, and you can see it was hurtful to him, right? Did you see that? I think he was hurt by that, right? Because his mom couldn't accept him for who he was, which is sad, right? And difficult. But yeah, the language is important, right? The things that we say have a lot to do with how we think about things and how we understand them, right? So we do have to pay attention to language, right? It's not just a word here or there, right? It's not just a pronoun here or there. It's kind of a big deal, right? Especially for people who, society is kind of trying to push them into a different box. It's a big deal to just accept them as who they are, right? It's a big deal to say to Kai, him, he, right? This is a young man, right? A young man athlete, right? That's important to say. Speaking of Kai, when Kai kind of came out, right? Kai was playing women's basketball and decided, okay, I don't want to pretend to be something I'm not anymore. I don't want to pretend to be a woman. I don't feel I am. I'm a man, and I'm going to tell people that, and I'm going to live my life as a man. There were a lot of questions, and what was he saying about that? What was frustrating for him? Anna, what was frustrating?
That they focus on his gender identity.
Yeah.
I mean, what a good athlete he was.
Yeah.
And then that he was
right? His gender identity really became the story, right? And everyone forgot about his basketball playing, right? And his performance in the game. And again, for those of you who watch sports, do you ever see that? Do you ever see people being interviewed after the game, and do they get asked about their gender? No. Do they get asked about what's in their pants? No, they do not, right? Again, like Kai says, nobody asks LeBron James about what's in his pants, right? And you wouldn't. That would be rude, right? Would that be a rude thing to do? Incredibly rude, right? But here we see that it's okay, right? People can ask Kai that. And why? Well, one thing, because when people are in minoritized groups, sometimes the dominant group forgets that manners still apply, right? Social norms still apply. If you wouldn't ask LeBron James about his penis, don't ask Kai about his, right? It's not any of your business, LeBron or Kai, right? Thank you. Yeah, it's not any of your business, but people forget that. What does it have to do with the resume study? This is a difficult question, I think, but what does that have to do with the resume study? The fact that people were asking Kai about his gender rather than basketball.
What resume study?
Say that one more time.
What resume study?
You remember when I told you that the researchers from University of Chicago sent out all those resumes with
Yeah.
black? Yeah. Okay. What's the connection there, do you think?
Because they were judging the people. No.
Okay.
Based on
What's that?
based on name.
Ba-
Based on name.
Not quite, Arena.
People in Laverne Cox models, and so black people are minoritized.
Yeah.
So, kind of minoritized group, so maybe something.
Right. So we said that in the resume study, black people were the minoritized group, and here we have a trans person who's in the minoritized group. True. Think anyone else? Well, remember what I said, that one of the reasons why the discrimination there was happening is because people started seeing those resumes with the black sounding names through the lens of the stereotypes they had, right? And so again, they were just looking through resumes. Well, maybe think of the kindergarten teacher example, right? You're seeing resumes of young women or women applying for the job of kindergarten teacher, fine. And then you come across the resume of a man, right? And again, all of these things get triggered, right? You're like, okay, well, why is this guy applying? This is kind of weird. I've never seen a male kindergarten teacher before. Are they okay? What's the deal with this guy, right? And we have all these questions, right? Because he's not who we expect, right? We have an idea of who we expect, a female kindergarten teacher, and here's this person who defies that expectation, right? And it's the same thing with Kai, right? Suddenly Kai becomes something different. He defies expectation, right? And people get distracted. They start seeing him through the lens of all the things that they think they know about transgender people, right? All of the stereotypes or the prejudices. People start asking, oh, do you have a crush on any of your teammates? But of course, that's a ridiculous question too, because just because we know Kai's gender doesn't really mean we know his sexual orientation, right? So Kai could be a trans man, but he could be into women, right? He could be a straight man, right? Or he could be gay and he could be into other guys, but we don't really know, and we can't make that assumption. But the person who asked that question did make that assumption, right? Oh, all of a sudden now you used to be on a women's basketball team and now you're a man. Are you crushing on any of your teammates? Well, number one, again, that's rude and none of anyone's business, but also it assumes his sexual orientation when we don't really know it, right? And so, again, people often get gender and sexual orientation confused, right? But your gender is how you feel and how you present yourself to the world as kind of a man or a woman, masculine or feminine. Sexual orientation is who you're into, right? And those things are not the same thing, right? And we can't assume that they are. Let's see. Oh, okay. Let's go to 6 here really quickly. Wow, time's flying. Why do you think that some of those male students were uncomfortable with Ari being in the locker room, in the change room with them? They went to the principal and complained, but why do you think they were uncomfortable?
Because they thought he wasn't the same sex.
Because they thought he wasn't the same sex?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and?
And it's just weird, like if I see a girl in the gents bathroom, it's weird. If a girl sees me in the women's bathroom,
That is weird, right? What else do you think? I'm going to come back to this. There's more there. But what do you think? Why were these guys uncomfortable with Ari in the change room with them? Yeah, they're kind of making an assumption about his sexual orientation, right? Based on the gender that they thought he was, right? Although, again, it's probably worth pointing. Oh no, okay, that's not true. Yeah, they based on who they thought he was, they're kind of making an assumption, right? But it's kind of weird, right? Because if we look at washrooms or if we look at change rooms, we divide them up by gender, right? There's a man's and a woman's washroom or change room, but we're not really dividing genders. We're really trying to divide sexual orientations, aren't we? Because like Avi said, it'd be weird if there was a woman in the change room, right? And vice versa. But it's really the sexual orientation part we're worried about, right? We don't want, you don't want to be like changing while other people are checking you out, right? It could be a little uncomfortable, right? It could be a little weird. So we're really trying to divide sexual orientations, but like I just said, sexual orientation and gender are not the same thing, right? You could do that. You could divide sexual orientations by gender if everyone was straight, if everyone was heterosexual. But is everyone straight or heterosexual?
No.
No, they're not, right? So are there gay guys in the men's locker room?
Yeah.
Yep. Are there lesbians in the women's locker room?
Yeah.
Yep. So it gets kind of confusing, right? And kind of what we have to do here is, first of all, we have to accept Ari's gender, right? We have to accept him as a young man. That's who he feels he is. That's who he's presenting himself to society, right? He's living the life of a young man. And we kind of have to accept that about him. But what about his sexual orientation? What do you think it is? Do you think he's straight or gay?
Straight.
Yeah, I think he's straight. What leads you to believe that? Yeah, right? At his birthday party, he seemed pretty excited that Rachel was going to show up, right? And I think, maybe he has a little thing for Rachel, right? Maybe he's, maybe they're in the early stages and maybe he's about to ask her out or, kind of thing. Something's going on. Something's happening, I think. But yeah, I would suggest that Ari is a straight young man. So should these guys be worried that he's in the change room? Is he interested in looking at those guys? No. Is he probably watching them pee? Doubtful, right? Like he says, nobody watches anybody pee. Like what is that? So again, people are getting kind of confused, right, about gender and about sexual orientation. They're confused about excuse me. They're confused about Ari because of course Ari had lived his life as one gender and now is living it as another. Those guys probably don't understand that or are not comfortable with it. And here we have all of this kind of bullying, right? I get the feeling, if you let me know if you disagree here, but I get the feeling that they weren't really so much uncomfortable as they were just trying to make his life miserable, right? I think they complained to the principal to try to mess with him, right? I think they probably were uncomfortable, but they weren't. They were bullying him through the principal, I think is what was happening. But yeah, that's kind of, there's kind of a lack of understanding, right? And a lack of acceptance there, right? If Ari is a young man, right? If he feels he's a young man inside, if that's how he identifies, he lives his life that way. Would you think anything of him if you met him in real life and you hadn't seen this documentary? Would you think he was another gender, or would you think he's just some dude? Just some dude, right? He looks like a young man. We see, of course, that he's, not that this matters, but we see that he's straight, right? He seems to be interested in Rachel. And so there's really no reason for him not to be in that change room, right? He kind of fits into, he's a straight male, right? Which, of course, straight males get to use the guys' locker room. So there's a lot of kind of unacceptance and confusion and probably some bullying as well going on here, right? And yeah. Okay. Last question I'll ask you here. We'll hear more about this, it'll be on Monday now. We'll hear more about this on Monday, but why do you think dating is more difficult for trans people than for cis people? Okay, it's difficult to find someone who can support them? Why do you think that's difficult? It's rare? I think you're probably right, but why do you think, why is it rare? Why is it rare? Anna, what do you think?
Well, I think it could be like a very emotional person.
Yeah.
Like, they're confident, you can be alone. So it can be emotional, like you don't know how they're going to react once you tell them.
Right.
You want to. Like, it can be like a really tricky process.
Yeah, right. It's so, especially if, if you're someone like Ari who, he does pass as a young man, right? But he points out that there's a point in a relationship, right? If it becomes a physical relationship, there's going to be something to reveal, right? In fact, his physical body is not like a biological male's, right? And so he's got to try and figure out how to deal with that, right? How does he tell the other person, right? And what's going to be that other person's reaction, right? What would your reaction be if, you were kind of starting to see someone, right? And you're like, oh, okay, this is going well. I like this person. They're really cute. This is going well. And then, of course, you find out that their genitalia is not what you expect it to be, right? It's the other thing, right? And a lot of people would be probably surprised, right? But also confused, right? Maybe upset, not really sure how to deal with that, right? So yeah, it's a struggle to know kind of how and when to reveal that. But then also, other people would struggle with how they felt about it as well, right? Why else do you think dating is difficult for trans people?
Because not everyone can accept that they are trans.
Yeah, well, maybe, not everyone would accept it. Let me ask you, this is a tricky question. Do you think, okay, let's say you go out on a couple of dates with someone, okay? You think they're really nice, they're cute, you're kind of into them, it's going well, and then they say, okay, but this is going well, Chen or Arena or whoever it is, it's going really well, I really like you, but I want you to know that I'm transgender, I'm a trans person. Is it okay for you to say to break up with them or to stop seeing them because of that? Is that okay?
That's probably that most people do.
Most people do, but do you think it's okay?
As soon as they get that, like, nope.
Whoop. Right? Yeah. Do you think it's okay?
It's not okay, but I might.
But you might?
I might.
Yeah. What do you think? Anna, what do you think? Is it okay?
Yeah, I think it's okay when it's how you feel.
Yeah.
I think what matters is how you interpret.
Yeah. Right?
You should try to not be rude.
Right. So there would definitely be a good way and a bad way to tell them, right? But you think it's okay because it's how you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's important how they feel.
Yeah.
You're also there.
Yeah.
So, I think sometimes you have to put yourself there first.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think? Other ideas? Put your hand up if you think it's okay. If you think it's okay to say, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm not into that, I can't see you anymore. Who thinks it's okay to do that? Okay. Okay, who thinks no, it's not okay? Not okay? David, why do you say not okay?
Because if they have a date, right, then the trans person should talk about for his trans first.
Yeah?
Yeah, before date.
Okay.
If someone does not accept doesn't accept for their other gender, they just love their straight gender.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's true, right? And again, you were fooled, right? For the first couple dates, you thought they were the gender that you thought they were, right? And then poof, right? This is a personal thing, but I'm gonna say, just in case some of you are feeling bad about what you're feeling, I think it's probably okay to say no, right? Because part of this has to do with your sexual orientation, right? And so if you're a straight man and you're seeing this woman and you've dated her a couple times and then you find out that she has a penis, that might be, that might kind of go against your sexual orientation, right? You might be like, okay, I'm really not into that, right? I'm sorry, I'm not into that, right? And I think that's okay, and I could be wrong, and trans people might disagree with me here, or maybe they would agree with me. But, if that's just something you can't, think about or deal with or accept, then yeah, you should probably say, okay, I can't see you, right? You should definitely be, you should be compassionate and kind when you break it off with anyone, right? But yeah, I mean, you can't really control that, right? And if you're really not into a trans woman who still has a penis, right? If you're not into that, then you're not into it, right? And you can't pretend you are. And it's really not fair to the other person to date them and not accept them, right? To not accept them for who they are. If you can't do that, then yeah, you should let them find someone who will accept them, right? And people do, right? We see in the documentary here, we have Shane, who's seems to be very much in love with Jessica, and Jessica's in love with him, right? And she says she doesn't really care about, wow, there is an eagle that just landed on the top of the train station. A bald eagle. I'll let you see it in a minute because it's really cool. Yeah, like she likes him, and she doesn't care what his genitalia is, right? She says, I've seen, there's two options for genitalia, male and female. She's like, I've seen them both. It doesn't matter to me what you have, right? She accepts him as he is, which is what you want, right? And so, again, if you were seeing someone and you couldn't accept it, I think it's fair to break it off, right? But gently. Right? Okay, that's all I have for you today. Look out the window and see that magnificent bald eagle, and I'll see you on Monday, okay? All right.
What is it?